मिलिट्री नाल मिलिट्री आउंदी रही
अगे पिछे अहीं
नाल
2-3 मौतां भी साडियां उत्थे आके हो गईयां हैगा हो गया बीमारी पै गई बहुत ज्यादा बड़ी मुसीबत ही
बिठे फिर काबला खड़ा नीर पै नेरी पै
जहाजा च भी रोटियां सानू इस तरह
बाहर पै जाना उसे काबला
करना
ते कोई जे पक्कियां नहीं
पक्कियां पानी गंदे पीते पता
ना झोने लगे झोने भी आया करके पानी पीना.
Throughout August and September, the columns of refugees grew and grew, from hundreds of thousands to millions.
Well, you imagine 2 million people on one road virtually, and it's just a seething mass of people trying to get water, trying to call in. Wells were poisoned, trying to find food, trying to cope, trying to cook, women having children. It's awful, awful things. And of course they often tried to stop us and to ask for help, and sometimes, if depending what we were doing, we'd stop and say, what's the matter, what do you want? And then they'd say, we know we've no food, and say, well, I'm sorry, I can't do anything for you, because that wasn't our job. We just didn't have any food to give them.
First they used to start throwing their baggage which they were carrying, everybody, whatever little they had to carry. And after 3-4 days they used to gradually drop, and then they were left with just the clothes shattered, tattered. And lastly, the mothers leaving their small babies. That was our biggest problem. And there were these crawling babies, and on the side of the road with these thousands and thousands of people just moving. It was a terrible sight, terrible sight.
Tens of thousands of people boarded special refugee trains that made their way between India and Pakistan. They were easy prey for the armed gangs that roamed the countryside. It was John Moore's job to escort a trainload of Muslim refugees to Pakistan.
It wasn't a train, it was just a lot of coal wagons, steel coal wagons, and this of course is August, which is pretty hot. And we loaded up these wretched refugees. It was very distressing, and the journey from Ambala to Amritsar by train normally you could do it in about, I suppose, 4 or 5 hours, and in this case it took 4 days. There was no water, very little water on the way. We had our own supplies of water for the 3 platoons, but we had a job to do, and we couldn't help them.
Three days into their journey, they reached the Sikh stronghold of Amritsar. Just 14 miles from the border, they were forced to stop to pick up water. The station had been taken over by hundreds of armed Sikhs.
Amritsar station was crawling with, it was packed, it was like sardines, right across, not just the platforms, but across the tracks. They all had weapons of some sort or another. Some were old blunderbusses, some were fairly modern rifles, spears, swords. They were shoulder to shoulder crowds, and pushing and shouting and screaming, and you realized that you were just going into a hell, and if you didn't look tough, you were for trouble because they would then have gone for us before the refugees. And I said the thing to do is to get the grenades out, let them see. A lot of them are ex-soldiers, these people here, the weapons they were carrying. Let them see you priming grenades, prime the grenades, and that they'll know you mean business then. And doing that, the crowd sort of melted back and away and left us clear. And I suppose we must have been in the station for about 4 hours, something like that. And just as dawn was breaking, we managed to pull away the engine to do the last 14 miles.
There had been very little planning for the movement of refugees or their protection. Most British troops had already been sent home, whilst Indian and Pakistani forces were in total disarray.
They were totally inadequate forces. The reason was very simple, because the Indian army was being split. At the same time, don't forget that the troops were also concerned about their families, because wherever they came from, the trouble was going on in their homes also. So they were very much concerned. And most of them were on leave, or they were on the process of joining their new unit, or they had already joined. So very few bodies on the ground, really speaking, available to us to deal with the job.
Most trains had no military escorts with inevitable consequences. John Moores was called to Ambala station to meet a train that had been attacked.
This was a trainload of, I don't know, 500, 600, 700 people, most of whom had been killed, slaughtered, mainly elderly people, young children, young women, and they had been attacked and slaughtered, shot. I can remember seeing a young woman with she was still alive, her head open, cut open, and you could see her brains, and knew there was nothing that we could do. We hadn't got any surgical facilities or anything like that, but it was a horrendous thing, and I still think about it very much.
Art student Satish Gujral helped organize the transportation of refugees. In Amritsar, he saw the hatred partition had brought.
A Muslim girls' school nearby had been raided, and all these girls had been brought out, stripped, then taken in procession to this location, where they were being systematically raped. I have recalled in my life story that when watching it, I looked at the face of those others who were attending it in search of compassion. I found none.
In the coming months, around 15 million people made the journey from one side to the other. At least 1 million were dead. Thousands more lay abandoned in makeshift refugee camps, stuck on the wrong side of the border. The Viceroy now led the relief effort.
My mother was forever visiting the Punjab. She visited in 5 months. She did 70 major tours of the Punjab into the camps and trying to organize the camps, organize the hospitals, get guards on the hospitals, get food. And they soon learned that tell Lady Mountbatten something or answer one of her questions and something will happen.
Pandit Nehru, the new Prime Minister of India, toured some of the camps with her. Finally, he came face to face with the price his people had paid for partition.